Hello and welcome to ghouls'n Live. As you can tell, I am not ghouls'n Live. I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and Cryptkeeper of D&Dark. And I'm here with ghouls'n Live. We're going to take this whole Into the Dark thing and spin it on its head. So, hi ghouls'n, what's it like being on this side of the table?
This is like super weird. If I remember correctly, like this was simply requested by one of the viewers, and then you jumped on it as well, and everyone was like, "Yeah, let's find out what Jack is up to."
I mean, it only feels fair to have you involved in all of this since you are one of the players. So,
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely see that. It's just, it wasn't originally planned.
I mean, I was being facetious when I said you should interview yourself, so I am happy to jump in and help out here. So tell us a quick thing about the game you're playing.
So this is Shadow of Mordor. You're playing the character Talion, and he's essentially linked up with this spirit of an elf that, I mean, if you've played the game, spoiler alert, this elf actually was the one that crafted the Ring of Power. And yes, this is Middle-earth that we're in right now.
All right, and I see you engaging in some stealth-based mechanics, so that is very appropriate going into your character. So, tell us a quick little snippet about your Invisible Man. You've mentioned a lot in some of your other interview videos, dropping little nuggets here and there, but just in like a sentence or two, kind of summarize what he's all about and what you're doing on that front.
So, as per the Invisible Man, I think what he really kind of wants to do is, at least speaking for the first episode, all he really wants to do is try and get through the day with his bounty. Essentially, craziness kind of ensues, and it turns out that this everything that's kind of happening is becoming a little bit more involved than he was planning. So
I can definitely see that, and speaking as someone who has far more context than any of the audience is going to,
right.
You do a really good job bringing a more grounded energy to what is an otherwise a lot more comical, over-the-top cast of characters. So, can you tell me a little bit about what's inspiring some of your characterization? Are you pulling more from, like, the 1930s movie? Are you pulling from a book? How much of it is in your own head? Where all are your inspiration points?
I lightly pulled a lot of the inspiration from, I would say, the book. In a way to kind of like cheat. I did actually find the audio version of the book, so hopefully that's not horribly bad.
Hey, if audiobooks are cheating, then I have never played fair.
It's literally just the fact that like we both, I'm sure, have like a very busy schedule, and it's just the fastest way because I do spend like a lot of time in the car. So I was essentially listening to The Invisible Man on audio, and then I was kind of thinking to myself, oh man, wouldn't it be so cool like if this was a thing? And then I remembered that I had to kind of pull inspiration from the character sheet that you gave me. And I mean, we kind of talked about how well you did with that, so I mixed it a bit with the book and what I read, and then, well, what I listened to, I should say. So what I listened to, and then also from the character sheet.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The character sheet stuff was kind of an amalgamation of all of the different sources. And for most of the different characters, it was just kind of my way of giving you guys a starting point for translating these characters into the context of D&D. So I'm very happy to hear how helpful that was.
Oh, yeah.
I gave a lot of you guys a ton of freedom to kind of make the characters your own and take them in your own direction, and kind of just use the character sheet as a like a baseline to springboard off of. And you've gone in some interesting places. So can you talk to me a little bit about what you consider to be your like defining moments as spoiler free as possible. You've been dropping stuff about the first episode, but I'm okay with going lightly into things that don't give away any like major reveals.
Oh, let's see. Well, see how this plays out. I would say probably one of my favorite parts that has kind of happened was there's gonna be a negative interaction between one of our party members and Jack. And having that to kind of play off of is such an interesting way to kind of get into this whole thing. So I'm trying not to get too far into spoiler territory, but I will say that it's not all, everyone's not going to be getting along. So
yeah, and I'm willing to say where your point of tension is, just without giving any contextual details. The sort of inter-party conflict, I try to shy away from like player versus player type things, but I really wanted all of you guys to not necessarily be on even footing at the start of the campaign.
Right.
Because too often I've like listened to a whole bunch of other real play podcasts in terms of like prepping for D&Dark, and a thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way, it can work out, but is, I think, not the most interesting option.
Yeah.
A lot of them kind of default to everybody is immediately friends and gets along and is all on the same page right from the get-go.
Right.
Which is a good kind of team dynamic to have eventually, but it feels a lot more earned if it's worked there and there is some sort of inter-party tension and everyone's coming from a different place and there can be a little bit of butting heads.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with the fact that, like, if it's a little bit more organic, that's what I want. So, I mean, I was originally going to be going into this with, if Jack doesn't know anything about magic, he's going to be either very much against it, or he was going to be, essentially kind of like overly curious about it all. So, and then I think I mean, above the table, like, we kind of agree that he was a little bit more curious about it all.
Oh yeah, and it's, from my standpoint as a DM and, like, kind of editing and sculpting the story around you guys, it is intensely helpful to me from a narrative standpoint to have you as, more so than any of the other characters, being kind of a fish out of water. You make for a really good audience surrogate and an excuse for me to dump exposition on.
I'm happy to play that role. I was admittedly very nervous because I feel like a lot of our players, I feel, of course, have a little bit more experience than myself. And not to say that I don't think I can keep up, but mostly just to say that I'm very well aware of the fact that I don't, like, everything that might be a story beat is definitely not going to be coming to me as quickly or as easily. So my character, and myself even, is going to be doing this to where I think I know where it's going to be going, but also I do get stuck with the fact of, like, I want to do more investigations, or I want to learn more information before I make a decision, which I don't know if that's going to lend itself very easily to all of our party members.
Yeah, and definitely having that sort of split in the party composition is mechanically very helpful too. Everyone has pretty neatly defined niches that they fall into, and so yours is a very helpful one. Kind of picking your brain a little bit in some of the same way that you've been picking everybody else's. I want to know what some of your longer term goals are for Invisible Man. What would you take as a, like, story priority, and what direction do you want him to go in?
Funny enough, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is maybe if he can interact with Raynor, because there's a few things that I kind of see happening, kind kind of early on to where it's like, I look at Jack's character sheet and mostly me being myself, I want to be a good guy. But Jack being himself, if I take him to an extreme, incredibly selfish and just like kind of out for himself, it's really more about I want to interact with Raynor because I want to see in the moment what Jack is essentially going to be choosing, whether it's the party or he offers Raynor a deal. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm slightly looking forward to, just mostly meeting Raynor, not making that a thing to force to happen.
All right. We'll see how things play out.
Yeah.
I'm in a particularly dangerous position when it comes to information about what's coming, so
Right.
I can't make any promises in any given direction, but it shouldn't be too long before you cross paths with him again. It will be a little while before it's a more major what's the word I'm looking for?
Like story beat?
Before you
or...
encounter him more fully and it's a more like significant event.
Right.
Although, for the sake of the audience, it's going to be a long time before he shows up again. I wanted to make sure he got his introduction in the first episode, and then he's going to be kind of an ever-looming threat on the outskirts for a pretty long time before he's... Relevant's not the right word, but before he is present again.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to running into him and seeing what the entire party kind of ends up doing, whether it's just like this whole let's get him vibe, or maybe it's going to be something to where we're just mostly interested in finding out what he's up to, or it's just going to be this all-out fight with everyone against him.
It's definitely going to be interesting, and there's from a lot of what I've got planned, there's going to be quite a few status quo changes between especially between the pilot and then, but between where we're at in our recording and now, because we're a pretty significant amount ahead of what's being released. I would hazard to say probably about 8 episodes worth of content ahead of the, not ahead, but like about 8 episodes worth into our sessions. Okay. So by the time that this releases, there'll be the pilot and maybe episode 2 will have come out. We'll be pumping them out once a week.
Yeah.
And we've got a bit of a backlog of our recordings, but we're planning on trying to be as consistent and regular with that as possible. We may eventually, once we catch up with ourselves, adjust our time frame.
Yeah.
To maybe meet a little bit less often, or space those out to be like every 2 weeks, but for the moment we are full speed ahead on cranking those out.
I mean, I'm loving the fact that we're able to meet up so often, but also at the same time I do kind of feel for you, because you've got to corral us essentially like almost every week, and I could almost imagine that like there's other things that maybe you might enjoy trying to do, like have your own life a little bit.
What? What's that?
I know.
But it is a source of a lot of fun for me and a good creative exercise to be able to explore. The first several episodes are fairly tame in terms of tone and content, but we definitely, and like just kind of a like being honest here for your audience, we are recording this right after having gotten out of a recording session for D&Dark.
Right.
And you can probably say with some pretty high certainty from that session that we just had, I'm trying to really lean into more of the horror and the gore. I'm throwing in a lot of elements of body horror, throwing some non-reality things in to try and live up to the horror aspect of our horror comedy brand. Though I will say we're still probably like 80-20.
Yeah, I was even going to say that, not to spoil anything, but we had a really good session that you did some absolutely incredible descriptions, and it was kind of like, holy crap, like this is actually kind of terrifying. And you kind of forget with all of the with all the players that we do have, we do kind of lean into some of the comedy of it all. But then when you get so much comedy and then we get the reminder of, oh yeah, this is also a little bit of horror too. I mean, you did a fantastic job with what we just had.
Thank you. That is very satisfying to hear. And that's exactly the balancing act that I'm trying to go for is I want to really let you guys be as bring the levity, be as lighthearted and comedic as possible, do your clever creative problem solving, do your fun funny character bits, and I'll be the bad guy of making the audience uncomfortable and bringing things back down to a more serious level of reality.
Well, I mean, I'm having tons of fun with it all, and I'm so happy that we get to experience all of this.
Absolutely, and I'm having a real blast, and the whole team dynamic gets to such an interesting place, and you guys are really taking all of your characters to such fascinating directions and extremes. We are probably getting close to where we'll want to call it for this interview, but you picked a really good game to kind of accompany your your roguish tendencies with your character in game.
And as per I'm dead. As per all of my gameplay, I was doing so damn good, and all of a sudden we're ending the episode and this happens.
So, with that as a pretty natural stopping point, is there anything else that you want to add to, any last little things you want to chat about your character to let people know about, or any, little things that didn't get brought up that you want to really hit and emphasize?
I think what I want to share is that in my head, because I do have a backstory for Jack, and you and I have talked about it, and it's literally just the fact that I want to make sure that all of my decisions in the game make sense, and logically, to where it's if there's a side discussion to where I don't know if Jack would do that, then in my head, I would go back into the history and say, well, for the back history that I have for Jack, pulling a little bit from the originality of it all and from a little bit of the book that I was listening to, this is kind of where I took him in the backstory, and this is why this makes sense to me. Essentially, he's in this current moment in time for episode 1 and a little bit further, he is a thief, and his goal is to make money and come out on top and not necessarily fight. So his backstory has always been get in, get what you want, and then get out. It's never been to stay and fight. So there are some of those story beats to where it's kind of okay, well, would Jack continue to fight, or would he basically GTFO? And that's kind of the balancing act that I have to do with every single combat, and it's just it gets kind of muddled sometimes, especially with where we're at now.
Yeah. I think that that mix of priorities is a good thing. Definitely all of you are on a really interesting trajectory with your character arcs. You're all going in very different directions, and that's what makes it super interesting to me. It's kind of funny. There are different things that I kind of realize from editing to recording, where there will be some sessions that we're in the thick of it, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a great session. This is so much is happening. This is really eventful. This is going to be a great episode. And others where I'm come on already. Nothing's happened in 40 minutes. We really need to get moving. This is going to be unbearable. And that's exactly the opposite when I'm doing my edits. And you guys really having your character moments is such a fascinating insight and such a meaty hook to what the heart of this podcast is ultimately turning into. And the more eventful bits are fun, but they really are only supplemental to what you guys are bringing to the table with these characters. So do want to say again, you're doing an awesome job and making my job as both a DM and an editor a lot more fun and interesting, and really giving me good stuff to work with.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to take little bits from each and every character that we've kind of had.
That's a good way to look at it. Everybody really does bring something very different to the table.
And I know for sure, not to boost anyone's ego, but I will say that I think Jack inadvertently is taking a little, like, some beats from Phantom.
Oh, that's fun and fascinating.
Yeah. So mostly because it's kind of like he's in a magical world of the occult, and he's seeing what is potentially another normal human walking around as if he owns the town, and it's kind of like, well, why can't I do that? No, I'm gonna try and do that.
I do love, and this is only kind of sort of spoilery, but I do love how tense your relationship is and how much is stemming from that. Especially the fact that you two are ostensibly the two only normal human beings on the team, with you having such polar opposite directions that you're coming from, and being such a good personality clash and such strong tension. It really is a lot of fun, interesting, dynamic opportunities for the story.
I mean, I'm excited to get more into the character development, and of course, I'm not gonna lie, like, I still get nervous when I'm interacting with anybody, just because I'm still learning a bit how to improv and everything. So,
well, that's the beauty of D&D, is it's improv with a lot of guardrails.
Yeah.
So you have a whole lot of handholds that you can lean on, and the mechanics really do lend into like leaning you in specific directions. So it's probably one of the safest environments to do improv in, because you've got so many safety nets.
well, I'm definitely having tons of fun with it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I think that's a good place to wrap up for today.
That feels better.
Yeah, let you end on a high note. So once again, everybody, I'm Danger Dan Jers. I am the DM or Cryptkeeper of D&Dark, and I host and run that podcast, which Grayson is one of our wonderful cast of characters in. And I hope you enjoyed getting a little glimpse into his psyche for once.
I know, that's super weird. No one ever hears from me. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Grayson, and we will end it off here.
All right. Thank you. And, of course, make sure to check out D&Dark, the podcast. I'll have links in the description below. And like we do with every episode, every video that's on here, I'm going to remind you to, of course, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.
You can listen to D&Dark on all major streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more, with new episodes premiering on Wednesdays. Follow us on Twitter at D&Dark Podcast to stay up to date with our goings-on, and we look forward to seeing you join us as we venture into the dark.